my colleague Brett Baer spoke with a man who will wield the gavel during that confirmation hearing.
We are here in the Senate Judiciary Committee room, joined by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman, Senator Chuck Grassley. Thank you for having us here.
I appreciate you calling me.
You just moved out the hearing for the Attorney General with a vote 11-9.
Yeah.
Jeff Sessions making it out of the committee here, and now you will begin this process for Judge Neil Gorsuch. Let's talk logistics, Senator. Time frame, first of all. Lay this out for people.
It's usually about 6 weeks from the nominee till we have a hearing.
6 weeks?
Yeah, and during that 6 weeks, it gives him an opportunity to one-on-one meet with members of the Judiciary Committee. That's 20 out of 100 senators. And then also, so many opinions that he's been involved in at the circuit court level, they will have to be gone through by the best of lawyers that we can get to do that for both Republicans and Democrats.
Judge Gorsuch has hundreds of opinions from the 10th Circuit alone, so it takes time to go through all that. So after the 6 weeks, then you start the hearing process.
Yeah, hopefully one day of hearings, but it could take 2 days. And then we'll at least have a separate day for those that are for or against him. Then after that process is done, he'll be put on the agenda the next week, and under the rules of my committee, any one member of the 20 can hold it over. So obviously he's going to be held over 1 week, and then holding over that 1 week, then the next week we debate within the committee and vote on it, and then it'll go to the Senate floor, and once it goes to the Senate floor, it'll be up to Senator McConnell, the majority leader, when he wants to bring it up.
And I want to talk to you about that in a second. But here, you are the chair. Dianne Feinstein is the ranking member.
Yes.
It is 11 Republicans to 9 Democrats.
Yes.
And the questioning for Judge Gorsuch will be what? Will it be limited? How many rounds?
My way is that I don't want to be arguing, taking a half day to argue what we're going to do. I think we're going to let people ask all the questions they want to ask.
All of them.
If it's 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, but the longer it goes on, they ought to realize that we have to get this done, and we're going to stay in session until we get it done.
There is a time component here. There are some key things that are pending in the court. Big cases that have been really held back to final arguments in April, waiting for potentially a 9th justice. Or do you feel confident that you can move Judge Gorsuch through this process in that time?
No. Just so that people understand, there's nothing arbitrary about this. We know what it has taken to get other people through the Supreme Court justice process for the hearing and everything else. They generally follow a pattern, so I would guess that we ought to be able to have this on the Senate floor the first week of April if Senator McConnell wants to, and I think he does want to get it done, and that there'll be the days of debate it takes, and then a vote, so that he could be sworn in on the Supreme Court, hopefully by the middle of April.
How much impact, though, does Judge Merrick Garland's nomination and that process that happened and the choice that was made have on this process?
Well, I think if there's people want to bring that up, I think they should realize that I was at the center of that debate over whether Garland should come up or not. It was a big deal in my re-election in Iowa, and I made very clear ever since the February 23rd letter when I said that this should follow the Biden rule and that we would let the people choose and then the new president would make it. So I said well before the election that whoever's elected president, we're going to process this. So Trump was elected, we're processing his nominee. But people need to understand that I didn't know who was going to be elected. In fact, it even looked like up till Election Day that Secretary Clinton was going to be the president. And if she were president, we would be processing her nominee.
I mean, obviously, Democrats look at it differently, and they are upset about the process and what happened. Senate Minority Leader Schumer was on the floor today talking about 60 votes. Here's what he said.
If this nominee cannot meet the same standard that Republicans insisted upon for President Obama's Supreme Court nominees, 60 votes in the Senate, then the problem lies not with the Senate, but with the nominee.
So the answer, he says, should be not to change the rules of the Senate, but to change the nominee to someone who can get 60 votes. President Trump said today, if they're not moving this forward, you should use the so-called thermonuclear option and get it. What do you think of that?
Well, we're not even going to talk about that, because we want this to be about the qualification of a man that got through the United States Senate 10 years ago for the Circuit Court of Appeals by a unanimous vote, plus the fact you want to remember in the first term of the Clinton administration, the first term of the Obama administration, we had 2 and then eventually 4 people that are on the Supreme Court now. There wasn't a single filibuster or obstruction on the part of Republicans against that, and I guess I would be pleading legitimately that Democrats ought to give the same courtesy to a Republican president.
Considering what we're seeing with the cabinet nomination process and that confirmation process, how much patience do you think Leader McConnell and President Trump will have if we see that through this confirmation process? I
don't know whether he has to worry about it. If this comes to the Senate floor the first week of April with the idea that we need to get that seat filled and you're up against an Easter break, I think that Senator McConnell ought to be telling the senators right now of what his plans are to move this along, and that if you have to go into the Easter break, do it. We are proceeding that this person is going to be confirmed, and confirmed in the normal way that the last 4 justices have been confirmed.
Which is 60 votes.
Yeah. They may have gotten 60 votes to be approved, but it wasn't a precondition for getting them brought up on the part of Republicans. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have been accused of obstruction.
I guess they look at the Garland nomination as somebody who should have been given a hearing and say, isn't there hypocrisy here?
The hypocrisy comes when they say what they just told you, when over a 30-year period of time, they said if there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court in the last year of a presidency, it shouldn't be processed. And so what they're telling you, there ought to be one rule for a Democrat president and yet another rule for a Republican president, and you think this Republican senator can stand for that?
I guess that's a no. Judge Gorsuch, you think he shouldn't have any problem here or on the floor?
What even Democrats have said about him who know him, he's an eminently fair and qualified person. He's a person that believes judges ought to judge and not legislate. He ought to interpret the Constitution as closely as he can to the original intent of the writers. He shouldn't be stretching federal law beyond congressional intent. He looks at it from a dispassionate point of view, which every judge should, the law, the facts of the case, and leave your personal views out of it, that you look at the law and reach a conclusion that maybe you don't even agree with, because that's what the law requires or the Constitution requires.
Do you believe that Democrats will try with all their might to stop this nomination? Or do you think they'll hold their powder dry for the next pick of President Trump?
If they were to do the latter, it'd be one thing, because Gorsuch is a person that's not a Scalia, but he's darn close to being a Scalia, so now the balance of the court isn't upset. And that's why they shouldn't be finding fault with Gorsuch, because you have 4 liberals, 4 conservatives, and you have Kennedy in the middle, the more moderate. And so the court is balanced what they want, see. The next one might be a different story depending on who leaves.
Well, Senator Grassley, we'll be covering it all the way through. Thank you for the time.
And I thank you, too.
James, from the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room, send it back to you.
Brett, thank you.